Hi, everybody. I am going to move us on to week 5, which is all about building vocabulary. And really, the focus of this is through using conversations in books and between the teacher and child, which is actually a really great way to have interactions and at the same time build vocabulary. So we're kind of merging some things together here. So as always, you have the module overview, the objectives, and the estimated length right here. This session is really helping to provide an overview of the research behind 3 key components of shared book reading. In particular, I want you to really hone in on the dialogic reading part, and then you'll be able to apply this to your own classroom. There are longer videos about dialogic reading that I've not uploaded yet. I'll probably put it on some supplementary materials for you. But for now, you'll be able to see in the readings here, you've got a reading about informational books with young children. This is from the Illinois Early Learning Project website. You'll click here to access that website, and then you can view this page and view these different concepts by clicking, and it will open. And then you'll scroll down, read about that, and then likewise for the next sections. For reading 2, this is at Reading Rocket's website. If you've never visited this website, it's excellent for really working with children preschool up through elementary grades. This is the article that you will read about dialogic reading. There's 2 different methods, 2 different techniques. One is called the peer sequence, which means to prompt the child, evaluate the child's response, expand the child's response, and then repeat the prompt to make sure that the child learned from the expansion. And then the other part of dialogic reading, another type of prompt, is the crowd prompt, which that's a little more in depth, and you'll see those specific things when you read that article. All right, going back over here. Then you've got strategies for selecting books to build vocabulary of dual language learners. Remember, we want to think about all the children in our classroom, but particularly our dual language learners need us to be intentional when it comes to everything that we're doing with literacy and language, and print and books definitely fall into play for that. So again, you're at this Dual Language Learners website, which is a part of the DRDP Department of Education at the State of California model. So you'll see there's some other things that you can click on when you get to the end. Many of these strategies, you're going to say, oh yeah, I do them. So then the next step would be to expand that, and how can you incorporate specific finger plays, songs, poems, oral language games, rhyming games that might even tie into a dual language learner even more specifically. And then lastly, I thought you would really enjoy this video series. Eastern Connecticut State University has a really nice center for early childhood education. They do a lot of nice research, particularly around play and math, and in this specific instance, this is their focus on families and reading. And so this tells a little bit about the family reading time, and then it tells a little bit about the video series. So there are multiple series here, and this is using the crowd approach for dialogic reading. So crowd means starting with a completion prompt, then you have a recall prompt, then you have the distancing, you've got, well, actually, then you should have the open-ended questions, then you should have the what questions, the why, what questions, and then you end with a distancing prompt. And so for some of our students enrolled in this class who are Spanish speaking, you can listen to these videos in Spanish. So I thought that would be I thought you would really enjoy seeing how you can learn a practice or refine. You may already know a little bit about dialogic reading because some of us do this very naturally, but now we can really tailor it specifically to a structure, either the peer or the crowd. And then you can teach your families to do that with their children at home. So those are the readings, and the video is included as a reading. And then you're going to go to presentations, of course. Here's the presentation PDF file. Here's the shared book reading presentation. Here's the instructions for the activities. You have 4 activities. I'm so excited about this story mapping that you're going to get to practice, which is activity 4. But you're first going to start about thinking about the genres of books. So the genre of book is the type of book that we might be selecting. So in this particular, so to build vocabulary, one of the things that we want to really hone in on are information texts. So information texts are nonfiction books that usually have a lot of text features, such as tables and charts and graphs and pictures. There may be glossary terms that are highlighted. So these are those books that we often use in project work for children to do independent research. And then occasionally we might have a large or small group where we read 1 or 2 pages at a time because of the length of information that's available in these books. So you're going to work a little bit thinking about that information book. And then for activity 2, which goes along with slide 43, this is where you're going to think about some instructional content. So this is a book that might focus on the alphabet, multicultural education, mathematics, maybe a science concept. And then you're going to help to pinpoint different vocabulary that you would support children's understanding of the topic and the vocabulary before, during, and after the reading. So you'll be able to do that. And then we have interactions to think about in terms of when you're working with different genres of texts, how do you have literal questions that you're going to ask for children to elicit comprehension types of responses, and then inferential questions, which would be applying some of those comprehension strategies to be able to infer and predict and have that determination of how they can use that information. And then you do activity 4, which is story mapping. All right, let's check this. Let's make sure my link works. All of those, remember, are links, live links to Google Docs. So you'll be able to get each one of those. This is session 5, and this is the 4th handout for the 4th activity. So that's how my numerics work, session 5, handout 4. So for this activity, story mapping, you're going to choose a story that you would read with dual language learners, and then you're going to practice how you would draw a story map with that group of children. Most always, 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 I'm going to tell you, anytime you're going to do something with a book, not just read it for enjoyment. Reading it for enjoyment, we could all gather and snuggle in as a classroom, but really reading it for actual learning and teaching, I would have small groups. And during center time or during some other like station work, I always called station work where there would be different type of manipulative activities that would be going on throughout different table work. Or maybe even in a learning center, but it would be different from our free play learning centers. So during station work, I might pull a small group, and then by the end of the week, everybody's gone through the story mapping process. That's especially important in preschool, especially when you're doing it for the first time. You want to be able to have children, maybe after you've done story maps with children for several weeks, you could introduce it into the large group. So here's how you're going to do this. And all of this is practice, right? If you were really with children right now, I would say go for it. Hey, maybe some of you are. I know those of you at St. Mark may actually be in the classroom. If you are, try it out. We're going to love to hear about it. Introduce the story to children, talk about the characters, who's in the story, talk about the setting, what is the setting, where does it take place, Talk about the time period, when do you think the story happens? And then talk about the problems. Ask the children to really listen carefully to the story and have them really think about, what's happening, what's the problem, what's the outcome, what's the events. And then after you read the story and you talk about what happens with the children, you're going to use the terms beginning, middle, and end, and then you're going to draw representations about what the children tell you. What happened at the beginning of the story? Okay, well then how did so and so, then what happened to Goldilocks as she entered into the Three Little Bears house? Now I'm using that as an example, but I hope that you will use a book that maybe you're not as familiar with, so that you will really have to think through each one of these processes. All right, so going back to our page here, for your discussion board, then you're going to post activity 4. So activity 4 is then going to become your post. So you'll collect that here, reflection activities week 5. And then assignments for week 5, you have your Dialogic Reading to build dual language learners vocabulary, week 5 activity plan. So you're writing an activity plan, you're thinking about dual language learners. If you're going to say to me, I have no Spanish speakers, I have no children speaking Vietnamese, I have no children, speaking in a different language in your classroom other than English, then I want you to think about what it might be like. I also want you to think about those pre-verbal children, because you may have preschoolers in your classrooms who are speaking very minimally, and they need support as well with vocabulary, and some of the same supports that you're going to give to dual language learners, you would give to children who are really on those beginning developing stages. So keep that in mind. And then I just put the reading here again to Dialogic Reading at Reading Rockets, because I really want you to choose a peer or a crowd method and really spell that out in this activity plan so that you can practice and apply that new reading structure. All right, that's it.